In fact, the writer often expresses a great deal more when he says, "I am unable to tell you how much I love you, how you can find God, or how beautiful a flower is." The topos of the inexpressible is unbelievably important in literature. It allows you, the reader, to think about things further alone. I, the writer, am not in a position to tell you everything, so you must try to come up with the rest on your own.
In an essay, The Practical Use of a Character, included in his book The Structure of Bad Taste, Eco gives an example where the reader's imagination is not stimulated by the writer, but rather curtailed. The writer concerned is Françoise Sagan, and the example comes from her third novel, written at the age of 22. In this novel, the feelings of one of the main characters are explained by referring to Marcel Proust's thoughts on the relationship between music and falling in love, without any further elaboration on this relation, described as la petite phrase. This narrows the reader's imagination and even breaks it down when the reader is unfamiliar with Proust's ideas. According to Eco, referring to specific works of art in this way is done by a lazy storyteller who perhaps may also want to appeal to a certain snobism in the reader. Eco suggests that some form of immaturity on the part of the writer might underlie this lack of creative vitality, although he admits that even more experienced writers can commit such a weakness. A similar use of a real existing work of art in a novel can be found in the writings of Marieke Lucas-Reineveld. Interestingly, at young age, the debut novels of these both writers became in no time international bestsellers. Reineveld's second novel, no English translation yet, refers repeatedly to paintings by well-known and unknown artists. Reineveld, whose pronouns are they, them, describes themselves not as trans, but as in-between. Their remarkable second novel, Mijn lieve gunsteling, My Dear Favorite, is about the obsessive love of a pedophile veterinarian for a 14-year-old girl, daughter of a strictly religious dairy farmer. The vet is the narrator of the story, and indeed he reads Proust's Recherche. In endless racing sentences, the vet gives extensive descriptions of the spindly boyish girl, and refers to a specific painting when describing her propensity for nose-picking. You looked like the child in a painting by Vaznetsov, a Russian artist, sitting on a bench next to a lady, with a finger deep in the nose. You looked like that. But who of the readers has ever seen this picture of a sadly looking nose-picking boy? It took me hours to find a drawing, not a painting, on the internet. A reference as such might sound interesting, but does not appeal to the reader's imagination. There has more to be said about a drawing to be able to understand the writer's intention. Contrary to the foregoing picture of the nose-picking boy, the vet now uses a lot more words to describe this painting, which came to his exalted mind when jogging in the night. A few sentences from his description. And I also briefly saw the painting by Abildgaard, Nightmare, from 1800, which I had once seen in a museum in Denmark, in which two naked women are sleeping in a four-poster bed. On the belly of the woman lying in front, stretched out and beautifully draped, as if she surrendered herself to what is on her stomach, you see the nightmare, painted as a black, chubby creature with elfin ears. It looks at you with glowing yellow eyes. A problem with such an elaborate description of a specific visual work of art, ekphrasis, is that if the reader doesn't know the work which is described, then it might happen that the more extensive the description, the greater the need to see the work with his or her own eyes. The English saying, "a picture is worth 1,000 words," is the basis for such thinking. In my case, when I read the description of Abel Gard's painting, I felt such an urgent need to see the real thing that I stopped reading and looked up the painting on the internet, and it was an eye-opener. The inspiration to make the present video came from this experience. It was Leonardo da Vinci who wrote that a poet would be overcome by sleep and hunger before being able to describe with words what a painter is able to depict in an instant. In short, describing in words a real existing visual work of art is a delicate matter. Halfway through the story, paintings by one of the greatest artists of all time, Raphael, are introduced. Cultured readers will be familiar with his works. To meet the peasant girl's particular interest in boys' genitals, De Vet shows her a few prints of Raphael paintings of a Madonna and Child, the large and the small Cupid Madonna, named after the 18th century owner of the paintings, the English Earl George Nassau Clavering Cupid. But the girl appears not to be interested in these paintings. After all, neither of them depicts the child's penis. De Vet then shows a third print of an unspecified virgin with child, in which the girl obviously shows more interest. It is not clear whether De Vet showed this particular painting. Indeed, in earlier times this painting was attributed to Raphael. Perhaps this painting is meant, which, like the two Cupid Madonnas, hangs in the Washington National Gallery of Art. After the three Madonnas with child, De Vet shows the girl a print of a putti made by Raphael, who has created many putti. Here two examples, a fresco and a drawing. The scene is described as follows. I conjured the next print of Raphael from my briefcase, that of Putti. I told you that the name Putti in sculpture and painting stood for a plump, naked and wing-like child figure, also called a love god. And again you fluttered around the garden table and you shouted fervently, I am Putti, I am Putti. It is not unexpected that in a Dutch book about a strictly Christian educated girl who can quote literal text from the Bible, two paintings with biblical scenes are mentioned. Such paintings formed a popular genre in 17th century Dutch visual art. Again, while jogging in the night, the confused vet starts hallucinating which he describes as follows. I saw the painting of Lievens in front of me, who had painted Abraham and Isaac in a close embrace while they looked up at the heavens, with the knife and the dead ram next to them. I lisped at the air that I wanted to be the ram. Oh, sacrifice me. Later in Reineveld's book, the vet worries that under his influence the girl will become unable to distinguish the good from the bad, and he continues, as with the painting by Govert Flinck, in which the influence of his teacher Rembrandt was clearly recognizable, and on which he had painted the blind Isaac from Genesis, who gave his blessing to the wrong son when he touched Jacob, who had his arm covered with goatskin, in order to pass for his brother Esau, and thus steal the blessing for the firstborn. So you, the vet addresses the girl, would also always give your blessing and love to the wrong one. In the Bible it is written, Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her older son, which she had in the house, and put them on her younger son Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goat skins. It appears that Govert Flinck has portrayed the scene accurately according to these words, although Jacob's perfectly fitting goat leather gloves look somewhat unbiblical. Apparently intended to please the culture-loving reader, Reineveld added to the description that the influence of his teacher Rembrandt is clearly recognizable in Flinck's painting. In the description of the Rijksmuseum, the location of the painting, this is stated thus: Flinck derived both this painting technique and narrative style from Rembrandt, by whom he was trained. One modern painting is included, introduced by the vet as follows. I wanted to see you happy again. I wanted to hear your happy child's voice again. So I showed you, by the light of my cell phone, a picture of Pierre Bonnard, which I had printed especially for you and kept in the pocket of my sweatpants. Bonnard was a French painter who, in particular, painted his sweetheart Maria Boursin, who called herself Marthe, naked in the baths. She suffered from a tuberculous disease and fear of contamination and therefore had to bathe a lot. Bonnard has made a series of paintings of his wife in the baths, so it is not clear which painting is exactly meant. However, the painting itself is not further described in the text. The vet focuses on the painter's peculiar perfectionism and not on what the painting represents. The pictures of Marthe in the baths are strangely lifeless, almost grave-like, and you might wonder if this can ever make a young girl happy. All this might give more insight into the troubled state of the veterinarian. Finally, this time not a painting, but a specific photograph, and I quote, where a man jumped straight down from the Twin Towers like a plastic miniature soldier. The girl is fascinated by this famous photo, known as the Falling Man. What makes this photo so terrifying is in particular the fact that the man in the photo falls head first. In the now following epilogue, I'll attempt to give you a similar experience as I had when reading Reineveld's description of a real existing painting, The Nightmare, which was unknown to me. While trying to see it as it were in front of my eyes, which is then followed by an image of the actual painting on screen. The painting I'll use here is made by a 19th century Belgian artist and shows a genre scene situated in the 17th century, which might be considered to have a striking correspondence with the story of the vet and the little girl. After the description, without the painting will be shown together with a repeat of the same description. Well, outside a shabby, thatched cottage, shaded by a tree in full leaf, stands, lit by the sun, a bony, clearly sick cow whose coat is in disarray. Next to the cow is a plainly dressed farmer's couple looking anxiously at the cow doctor. The confidently smiling man points to the ailing cow. He is richly dressed in a doublet and breeches with a cloak and a feathered cap. Behind the half-opened Dutch door, two older girls, possibly the couple's daughters, look on with interest. And, at the feet of the cow doctor, sitting on his knees, a nice little boy seems focused on measuring out a medical dose from a casket. Well, outside a shabby, thatched cottage, shaded by a tree in full leaf, stands, lit by the sun, a bony, clearly sick cow whose coat is in disarray. Next to the cow is a plainly dressed farmer's couple looking anxiously at the cow doctor. The confidently smiling man points to the ailing cow. He is richly dressed in a doublet and breeches with a cloak and a feathered cap. Behind the half-opened Dutch door, two older girls, possibly the couple's daughters, look on with interest. And, at the feet of the cow doctor, sitting on his knees, a nice little boy seems focused on measuring out a medical dose from a casket.